for someone. I thank my lucky stars I don't have to live without. Thank you, time. Thank you, space. I know I'm in the right place, and it feels too good to be true. So nice to meet you. So nice to meet. So nice to meet you.
Meet cute. It's sort of like that moment in a movie or a book or something where a couple, there's a spark or yeah, they realize they're meant to be together, sort of thing.
Annie and Russ.
I'm the executive director of the Kensington Business Improvement Area, and this is my 21st year in the job looking after Kensington.
I am currently happily retired. I was for nearly 20 years a network technician for the local cable company, but not anymore, and I'm enjoying retirement.
Actually, I kind of like really bleak winter Norwegian murder mysteries.
I enjoy them. They're not at the top of my list, but I do enjoy them, and you know, basically, you know, they're usually well written and well done with, you know, popular people, and you know, of course, all the Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts things that always appeal to me. Our daughter is a huge fan, and we really enjoyed watching them with her.
Yes.
And of course, you know, Love Actually and Notting Hill and all these. It's, and of course, the Meg Ryan ones are always really well done.
Yes. We were actually matchmaked in university by a friend of ours, and he thought that we should be a couple. And the first time he introduced us to each other or put us together, I was to give him a ride somewhere, and I'm an impatient person who hates to be late, and I did not fulfill my obligation and regretted that after the fact, that it wasn't very kind of me. And so our friend waited about 6 months and then put us together a second time with a few other extra people. I had an old beater car, and people wanted to go to a concert in the next town. So everybody was going in my car. I think he pretty much ignored me all night because I'd been mean and unkind, and I ignored him all night because I felt I'd behaved badly. I was embarrassed at how badly I'd behaved the previous time. So our friend waited another approximately 6 months and put us together for a third time. It was to play racquetball. He invited me back to his apartment afterward for tea and raisin bread with cheese, which is a Nova Scotia thing. And I'm from a very small town in Nova Scotia, mainland Nova Scotia, and he is from Cape Breton in Nova Scotia. So, and we hit it off. We had a nice chat and visit and stuff, and
third time the charm.
Third time the charm, yes. So we dated for 2 weeks and moved in together and have been a couple for 44 years.
More of mutual agreement to be at the same place at the same time. And say it was a small university town, and it's a very small town. The students actually outnumbered the residents. And so, you know, there was quite active social scene, so there was always something going on, you know. And they say, well, so-and-so is having a party on Friday night. I think I'm going to go. How about you? Well, you know, that's okay, yeah. So, and that was it. And it was the beginning of a long weekend, and we basically spent the whole weekend together and got to know each other well, and that was it.
Yeah. Shortly before we met, I just finished a Master's of Science and Economics degree from a British university, Aberystwyth, with a specialization in military studies. And I was headhunted by the University of Calgary to come out and be the first employee for a program funded by the Department of External Affairs called Strategic Studies. This would be in 1981 during the Cold War. So I was tracking Soviet and American nuclear submarines under Canadian Arctic ice for the Department of External Affairs. It was a 9-month contract, and I planned to go on and do a PhD. And we had a beautiful apartment overlooking beautiful scenery in Wolfville. So he was going to stay there and hold on to our lovely apartment. I'd only be gone for 9 months. And we just missed each other so much. that he came out end of October, I guess, or early November.
Very early November, 4th, I seem to recall.
Yeah, I came out the end of August, and we just missed each other too much. 9 months was going to be too long, so he gave up that beautiful apartment, and we
9
saved
months
our money.
became 22 years very quickly.
Kensington was our first home when we moved here. We lived just a little bit over in Hillhurst, but then we moved over here and we lived right where the LRT hits the ground on this side of the river in a mangy old building that was there at the time.
Historic.
Historic, yes. It was a brownstone, but not like the fancy ones. It was a rundown one. It was sort of like the cool community, right? It was, you know, in the early 80s, it was one of the places that it felt safe for us because we were coming from small town Nova Scotia. We were small town kids, and our university town was a small town too. So coming to this big city felt a little bit scary, and this felt a little bit like a village. It felt like a safe place. I think in those early days, the LRT was coming through, so there was a big controversy about that, about whether the LRT running through this area would you know, irreparably divide the Sunnyside residents from the Hillhurst residents and from Kensington. And, you know, if anything, it's a huge bonus for Kensington Business Improvement Area that we have an LRT stop right here. You know, it's a big bonus, and it certainly has not damaged the community at all. You know, but it was interesting at the time that people were so concerned about what this would mean for Kensington. But Kensington, I always say, has been a shopping district for over 100 years, and it's gone through all kinds of changes over the years.
Well, it was kind of serendipitous. You know, Ann and I were happily cohabitating, and you know, we're kind of from the freedom generation, so you know, getting married didn't seem like something that we needed to do. And our parents were, you know, comfortable with living together, so there wasn't pressure in that direction or anything. We were at a downtown bar one evening, and you know, we were engaged in deep conversation, and a gentleman sitting at the bar said, "Are you two young people married?" And he said, "No, never really thought about getting married." He said, "You seem so happy together. You should be married." And it kind of planted the seed. And at the same time, we were kind of moving towards the idea that maybe we want to start a family. And he said, "You know, maybe now is the time." And so I put together a short formal proposal and thankfully agreed. And they say we got married during the Olympics on Valentine's Day.
We got married in my parents' house. They had a big house on a lot of land. So there was, my father did fireworks to celebrate, and we had a friend in 18th century Scottish regalia.
Kilted bagpipes.
Kilted bagpipes, right? And it was a beautiful, sunny, snowy February day, and Russ's parents had to drive up from Cape Breton, and his aunties made the cake for us, and it was in the back of the car, and they have to come over a big mountain to come out of Cape Breton. And Russ's father ran a trucking company and was an incredibly good driver, and the vehicle started sliding sideways on Kelly's Mountain. There's a huge drop there. And he's trying to keep the vehicle on the road, and Russ's mother and the aunties are all shrieking as though he's joyriding and saying, "Monk, the cake, right?" We love that story about he's worried about them going off a cliff, and they're worried about the cake icing being dented. The cake was delicious. So it was a layer. It was
fun.
It was fun. It was 3
No
layers.
damage.
No damage. It was 3 tiers. They had called us. Russ's mother, the mothers called us often early in the morning because it's a lot earlier in Nova Scotia. Woke us up days and days and days asking us questions about what do you want to do, and then of course they pleased themselves about things. Russ's mother said, "Do you want the bride and groom on the cake or flowers?" That Russ's sister preferred the flowers, and I said, well, we asked Russ and we said, yeah, okay, we prefer the flowers. So when they set up the cake at the wedding, the flowers were there and the bride and groom. and we loved that they were joyful about that.
A little funnier than that, actually, because I said, if the plastic bride and groom figurines, and I said, I don't want a bride and groom on top of my cake. I said, I don't like it. I said, okay, fine. So the bride and groom were between the top and the second tier. They weren't on the top of the cake. They were in between.
So it didn't defy him.
Polite enough to ask what you want, but not polite enough to do it.
And there was a dark fruit cake, and then a light fruit cake, and then a cherry pound cake. It was a small one on the top.
Yes.
Kensington, they gave the job to me. I think the other people, although they had experience in the BIA world, business improvement area world, when they interviewed me, I spoke about what I loved about Kensington and how it had been my first home coming from a small town in Nova Scotia, and how I felt at home here, and how Russ proposed to me on 10A Street, a couple doors down on the other side of the street from K Pub, where we had an apartment, and I'd bought my wedding dress at Peacock Boutique, a vintage 50s ball gown with a black velvet bodice. My mother was, a little uneasy about that, and made me a lovely lace jacket that covered that up so that I wouldn't regret that choice later in life. And she was right, and it was a beautiful match. It was perfect. But we had so many experiences here in Kensington, and it felt like home. So it was exciting to get this job and feel like I was back in Kensington.
Her love made her understand what made it a wonderful, thriving neighborhood. And they said, this is the attitude that we need to make it better. You have to know what's good, and what to leave alone, what to fix, and to come in with a cookie cutter approach and say, we'll do this and we'll do this and we'll do this and we'll get that. That doesn't work in the real world. Works great on paper. And they said, you have to love it to make it better. And they were right.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. So my job is to create an area where community and business thrive. Some of the projects I've done are looking at areas where residents take a shortcut between buildings to get to the business district. And those are narrow, dark at nighttime areas. So we've put murals in some of those and lighting in some of those areas just to make it safer for people to come down here. And I figured out which were the most popular walkways between buildings by watching in the wintertime after the first snowfall, where were there tracks that showed me that people used these kind of routes, because we couldn't do every single building. We do quite a bit of art. We've got Dale the origami horse that's over by Memorial Drive. He's made of Corten steel. He weighs a ton. He's not tethered in any way to the sidewalk, but nobody can move him without a small forklift. We have our Kensington Love Heart Bench that's out here, and a giant K. We do a lot of events in Kensington too. During the pandemic, we knew that artists and musicians and stuff were struggling to find work, and people didn't feel safe being out in public. So we ran a campaign where we spent $40,000 of my budget money for the not-for-profit, for the business improvement area, in our own businesses, buying gift cards from our own businesses in the denomination of $25 or $50. And then we ran a campaign where every weekend for, I think, 7 months, every Saturday and Sunday, we hired a musician to play outdoors, and we had fire pits in cold weather. And we had postcards for Kensington, the campaign was called Kensington Love, and that's now like our hashtag. And the idea was that you had to write a physical letter you could use our postcards, or you could just write a physical letter to us saying why you loved Kensington. And every week for those 7 months, we gave away a gift bag worth $1,000 of Kensington gift cards. And they were in those denominations of 25 or 50. So there was about 30 to 35 gift cards in a bag. So if you weren't our customer before you won that, you probably would be our customer by the time you used up all those gift cards. And the point of that was we were putting money in the pockets of our business owners. We are encouraging people to feel safe and come outside to fire pits on an outdoor public plaza in Kensington. And you could not enter the contest online. You had to bring your letter to us and put it in a mailbox in Kensington, not a Canada Post mailbox, our mailbox. And so if at the end of the week we would choose our favorite letter and they would get the prize, and then we'd empty the mailbox. So you had to start again, enter again the next week, you had to come to Kensington again. And so we got thousands of letters from people saying how much they loved Kensington. And that was our way to help people feel safe to get back out into public again. And those were joyful days because everybody who stopped was so charmed that there were fire pits and free hot chocolate and coffee and live music, remembrance of when we did those things before the pandemic. And people would say over and over, it's just so amazing to talk to somebody that doesn't live in my house, right? And just to talk to a stranger briefly, it's just such a wonderful experience. And we do Christmas in Kensington, which we're doing right now with free horse and wagon rides and free hot chocolate and fire pits and music and a throw a beanbag game and a wonderful Santa. We have the best Santa.
I've helped out several winters with the horse and wagon ride, but and just seeing the joy and enthusiasm in the faces of children about there's something when the horse first walks away and the wagon starts to move, it is ecstasy that you see in their faces, and it's wonderful.
Kensington also, almost all of our events have some kind of charity component associated with them. So we're doing a Veterans Food Bank drive during Christmas in Kensington. And so that giving back not just to the Kensington community, but to the greater community is part of what we do as well. This job certainly has fulfilled me for 21 years. I've enjoyed bringing some tasteful density to this community because a shopping district needs about 10,000 people living locally within about a 15-minute walk in order to go from surviving to thriving. And so, those we depend on those local residents to help keep the shopping district good. And so it's been a pleasure working here. Kensington, for me, home, and passion for the small businesses. I was kind of sort of thinking about retiring just as the pandemic came along, and I thought I can't possibly abandon these guys, all these small businesses after, putting so much blood, sweat, and tears into it all these years. And so I'll see them to the other side of all of this before I hand over the reins to somebody else. But yeah, I would say home for me, professionally, but also personally.
I'd strongly agree with home, but I also would like to lean towards originality. The businesses are independent. Something that really means a lot, whether it's a bar, restaurant, or a gift shop, is the possibility of bumping into the owner. You're never going to bump into the owner at a Tim Hortons or an A&W. If it is, it's a miracle. Yeah. Whereas, most of the businesses here, there's a very, very good chance that you will be in conversation with the person who opened and owns the business. And that personal contact really means a lot to me. Plus, my lifelong interest in economics has always told me that when the profit from a business endeavor stays in the community where it's earned, everybody benefits. Once it leaves, it's gone. Yeah. So if the owner lives here, well, then that all the benefit from the business stays here, and that benefits everybody. So yeah, home and just the originality of and the variety, because you know, when you have an independent business, it's unique. Even if they're doing the same thing as another place, the fact that it's one person or one family's endeavor gives it a uniqueness that you're not going to find somewhere else. So it makes you want to participate and be here.
We celebrated one of our anniversaries here in Kensington because we don't usually do big trips and stuff. And so we stayed at the Riverside Inn, which is a lovely little boutique hotel right here in Kensington. It has about 18 rooms, and it's just so lovely.
Have they changed the name to, is it Hotel Arts now?
Yeah, Kensington Hotel Arts. It
Yeah.
used to be called the Kensington Riverside
Same
Inn.
place.
Yeah, same place. Same place, a lot of the same people. And so we stayed there for a weekend, which was just so lovely. You know, we went for drinks before going somewhere, drinks at Cape Pub before going to dinner somewhere else. And that was one of the times when we trampled on one of our teenagers on a first date in Cape Pub. And that's part of what makes Kensington so charming, is that you run into people that you know, and it's a small enough community that people remember each other and stay in touch.
The sociability of Kensington, the bars and restaurants, and of course the Plaza Theatre. Always love going to the Plaza, and you know, it's home for us. We were just, you know, so comfortable together, and so enjoyed each other's company that we just never had any thoughts of not continuing. It's just, that's the way it was. I think the biggest lesson in a long-term relationship is to always listen to the other person. Never fall into the complacency of thinking, I know this person so well, I know what they're thinking, so I don't have to listen. No, you do. You always have to listen. And, you know, sometimes we do things Anne's way, sometimes we do things my way. And more often than not, we try to meet in the middle. You know, it's respect and communication. It's more than anything, I think, is what keeps people happy and together.
Well, and he's always been my hero because, you know, when we were dating those 2 weeks, we realized within days we were feeling serious about each other. And I disclosed to him that I had multiple sclerosis, and his boss, his wife, was bedbound with multiple sclerosis. It can be very devastating physically for people. And I was early in my diagnosis, and so we didn't know what that was going to look like over my lifetime. Will I be able to work? Will I be in a wheelchair? You know, will I be able to have children? All of those questions were totally up in the air because of this diagnosis. And so I disclosed that to him because I hadn't in the first few days, and said, you know, if you want to walk away, like like it's a big thing to take on. We were 22 and 21, right? And he didn't walk away. And to me, that was always, yeah, he's a stand-up guy, right?
So nice to meet you. So nice to meet you. Are someone I'm absolutely sure about. You are someone I thank my lucky stars I don't have to live without. Thank you, time. Thank you, space. I know I'm in the right place, and it feels too good to